The coral kingdom buzzed with an iridescent glow, all thanks to the daily harvest of shimmer algae. This peculiar plankton, cultivated on the sunniest parts of the reef, was the reef's energy source, its light at night, and frankly, its favorite snack. Every morning, the community gathered to collect it, a task usually as calm as a napping sea slug. But not today. Today, Bubbles the blowfish was on glow-algae duty, and Bubbles was, well, Bubbles. Bubbles was a cheerful, round little blowfish with eyes that sparkled like freshly polished pearls. He loved his home, his friends, and most of all, feeling excited. The problem? When Bubbles got excited, he inflated. Not just a little puff, mind you, but a full, glorious, buoyant balloon, bristling with soft, harmless spines. He'd learned to manage it, mostly. He practiced deep-sea breathing exercises, counted seaweed stalks, and even tried singing calming kelp lullabies. But the shimmer algae harvest was just too thrilling. The air shimmered, the colors popped, and the gentle current carried the sweet scent of fresh ocean goodies. "Look, Sheldon, the biggest cluster yet!" Bubbles chirped, his voice already a bit squeaky. Sheldon, a cautious sea turtle, slowly blinked. "Easy there, Bubbles. Remember what happened last week with the coral crunchies?" Bubbles deflated slightly, remembering how he'd accidentally bounced all the crunchies into a grumpy moray eel's cave. But the sight of a particularly plump patch of glow algae, glistening like liquid starlight, was too much. His best friend, a zippy little clownfish named Coral, dotted around him. "Bubbles, don't get carried away. We need this for the evening glow fest." Coral's words, however, only fueled Bubbles' enthusiasm. He spotted the grand central pile of harvested glow algae, a magnificent shimmering mound waiting to be distributed. "Oh, it's beautiful," Bubbles squealed, unable to contain his joy. A tiny bubble escaped his lips, then another, and then with a tremendous whoosh, he inflated. He didn't mean to. One moment, he was admiring the pile. The next, he was a giant, buoyant sphere. His soft spines, usually tucked neatly, now fanned out, accidentally hooking onto the very base of the colossal algae mound. The sudden buoyancy lifted him, and with him, the entire heap of precious glow algae. "Whoa, what's happening?" cried a startled crab. Bubbles, now resembling an enormous, floating, glowing beach ball, rose steadily towards the surface. The entire reef watched in stunned silence as their beloved glow algae, suspended beneath an increasingly panicked blowfish, began drifting with the swift morning current. "Bubbles! E-algae!" Coral shrieked, darting after him. Sheldon, shaking his head with a slow sigh, started his ponderous paddle. Bubbles, floating higher and higher, looked down at his rapidly shrinking friends. "Oops, I didn't mean to," he called out, but his voice was muffled by his own inflated body. The current, stronger than usual, tugged him away from the reef, carrying the entire community's supply of light and sustenance towards the open ocean. The great glow algae grab had just begun. The coral kingdom was in an uproar. Without the glow algae, their night would be dim, their tummies rumbling, and their energy levels completely zapped. But there was no time for grumbling. Coral, usually a blur of orange and white, was now an even faster blur, kicking up sand as she zipped after the receding glow. Sheldon, ever steady, tucked his flippers close and began his powerful, rhythmic strokes. "Bubbles, can you hear us?" Coral yelled, her voice barely carrying over the swift current. Bubbles, a distant shimmering dot, was bouncing erratically, pulled by the currents and his own internal struggle to deflate. He looked like a giant, wobbly lantern being carried off into the blue abyss. The chase quickly became an odyssey. First, they had to navigate the whispering willows, a dense forest of swaying kelp. Normally, it was a peaceful place, but today, it felt like a tangled maze. Coral, small and agile, weaved through the fronds with ease. But Sheldon, with his broad shell, had to push and gently nudge his way through, often getting a strand of kelp stuck on his nose. They could see the faint glow of the algae ahead, like a beacon leading them onward. Next, they encountered a grumpy school of sardine tourists, meticulously organized in a perfect, shimmering sphere. Bubbles, still inflated and clumsy, had bounced right through their formation, causing them to scatter in a frenzy. Coral and Sheldon had to painstakingly reherd them back into their orderly ball before they could pass, listening to their agitated chirps about disrupted vacation plans. Honestly, some fish have no respect for personal space, grumbled one sardine. As they swam further, the reef's vibrant colors faded, replaced by the deeper blues of the open ocean. The water grew cooler, and the creatures they encountered became more unusual. A curious sunfish, flat as a pancake and twice as wide, peered at them with one enormous eye. A group of playful dolphins, mistaking Bubbles and his glowing cargo for a new game, briefly joined the chase, nudging him playfully, which only made him bobble more uncontrollably. "We have to catch him before he drifts into the deep current," Sheldon panted, his usually calm demeanor showing a hint of urgency. The deep current was a vast, powerful river of water that snaked through the ocean, known for carrying things far, far away, sometimes never to be seen again. Bubbles, meanwhile, was starting to feel the enormity of his predicament. His excitement had long since drained away, replaced by a growing knot of worry. He tried to deflate, tried to release the air, but the more he worried, the more stubbornly inflated he seemed to become. The glow-algae, his accidental parachute, bounced along with him, a constant reminder of his big mistake. He could see Coral and Sheldon, two tiny specks, diligently following him, and a pang of guilt shot through his bloated form. The ocean stretched endlessly before them, a vast, unpredictable playground for Bubbles' runaway adventure. The endless blue stretched before them, the sunlight becoming a distant memory as they drifted deeper. The warmth of the coral kingdom was long gone, replaced by a cool, mysterious silence. Bubbles, still stubbornly inflated, felt a shiver despite his buoyant bulk. The glow-algae, though still radiating its gentle light, seemed dimmer in the oppressive depths. Suddenly, a massive shadowy form loomed ahead. It wasn't a fish or even a rock. It was a sunken ship, its wooden planks encrusted with barnacles and draped in long, ghostly strands of seaweed. Its mast snapped in half, pointed like a skeletal finger towards the surface. This was the legendary Silent Galleon, a place reef elders warned young fish away from. Legends said strange currents swirled within its hull, and even stranger creatures sometimes made it their home. "Oh no!" Sheldon rumbled, stopping short. "Not the Silent Galleon. The currents inside are a nightmare." But Bubbles, caught in the relentless pull of the deep current, was being swept directly towards a gaping hole in the ship's side. With a horrified squeak, he and his glowing cargo were sucked into the dark maw of the wreck. Coral gasped, "Bubbles!" Without hesitation, Coral zipped into the darkness, Sheldon following, his powerful tail pushing him against the strong currents eddying around the shipwreck. Inside, it was a labyrinth. Twisted metal and decaying wood formed confusing corridors, and the only light came from the glow-algae bouncing wildly ahead of them. Bubbles was being tossed around like a ping-pong ball in a washing machine, the glow-algae clanging against the ship's rusty walls. Suddenly, a pair of enormous bioluminescent eyes snapped open in the gloom. A colossal giant squid, usually a solitary hunter of the deep, had been napping, camouflaged against the ship's hull. The constant banging of the glow-algae and the frantic bouncing of an inflated blowfish had rudely awakened it. Its massive tentacles uncoiled, slithering out from the shadows. "Run, Bubbles!" Coral shrieked, but Bubbles was too busy trying not to get squashed against a wall. The squid, annoyed and curious, extended a tentacle, gently, almost experimentally, poking Bubbles. Bubbles, startled, bounced higher, accidentally nudging the glow-algae pile right into the squid's face. The squid recoiled, its eyes flashing brighter in surprise, then narrowed. This was no ordinary snack. This was a glowing, noisy nuisance. One thick tentacle shot out, wrapping around a significant portion of the glow-algae. The squid began to pull it towards its beak, its other tentacles reaching for the still inflated Bubbles. "Help!" Bubbles squeaked, his voice muffled by panic. Sheldon, usually so calm, knew they were in deep trouble. They had to act fast, or the reef's glow-algae, and perhaps Bubbles himself, would become the giant squid's accidental breakfast. Panic surged through Bubbles, making him even more impossibly inflated. The giant squid, now thoroughly irritated, pulled harder on the glow-algae, threatening to tear the precious bundle apart. Its remaining tentacles lashed out, one narrowly missing Coral as she zipped past, attempting to distract the massive creature. Sheldon, surprisingly agile for his size, began circling the squid, stirring up a cloud of silt. "Bubbles, you have to deflate!" Coral shouted, dodging another tentacle swipe. "Think calm thoughts, happy thoughts." But calm thoughts were nowhere to be found in Bubbles' bubbly brain. All he could feel was terror and guilt. Guilt for losing the algae. Guilt for putting his friends in danger. His body, already a taut balloon, felt like it would pop. Then a small, quiet voice echoed in his head, a memory of his elder, wise Aunt Flo, a pufferfish known for her zen-like calm. "Bubbles, when the inside gets too big, the outside follows. Breathe out the bigness and let the small, happy you shine through." Bubbles closed his eyes, ignoring the thrashing tentacles and the creaking of the ancient ship. He pictured the reef, calm and glowing. He thought of the happy faces of his friends, not their current expressions of alarm. He focused on the peaceful rhythm of the ocean's distant hum, rather than the squid's angry snorts. He took a slow, deep breath, holding it. Then, with a tremendous effort, he pushed the air out. It wasn't easy. It felt like trying to squeeze a watermelon through a keyhole. But slowly, painstakingly, the air began to release. A soft, steady hiss escaped him. His taut skin began to wrinkle. The bristles of his spines began to retract. He was shrinking. As bubbles deflated, the enormous bulk of the glow-algae, no longer buoyant, began to sink. The giant squid, momentarily confused by the sudden change in its glowing meal, loosened its grip. Seizing the opportunity, Coral and Sheldon acted in perfect sync. Coral, with a burst of speed, nudged the now compacted algae bundle away from the squid's grasp, while Sheldon, using his powerful flippers, created a strong current, pushing the entire bundle out of the ship's opening. Bubbles, now a regular-sized blowfish, felt a wave of exhaustion wash over him, but also an overwhelming sense of relief. He swam weakly after the glow-algae, which was now drifting safely away from the squid and the treacherous wreck. The giant squid, grumbling its deep-sea complaints, decided the glowing nuisance wasn't worth the effort and retreated back into its shadowy slumber. "You did it, Bubbles!" Coral cheered, darting around him. Sheldon nodded, his gaze gentle. "You truly did, little one. You thought before you blew." Bubbles looked at the rescued glow-algae, then back at his friends, a new understanding dawning in his eyes. He hadn't just deflated. He had deflated his overwhelming emotions. He had learned the importance of managing his bigness, not just physically, but emotionally too. The long journey home still awaited them, but now he felt a quiet confidence, knowing he could face it without causing any more bubble trouble. The journey back to the Coral Kingdom was long, but it felt entirely different from the frantic chase. With the glow-algae secured by Sheldon's strong grip and Coral acting as a swift scout, Bubbles swam steadily beside them. Every now and then, a thrill would ripple through him, seeing a shimmering school of fish, spotting a rare, vibrant coral, or even just the joy of swimming alongside his friends. But this time, instead of feeling his body inflate, he took a deep, calming breath, focusing on the cool water against his fins, the steady beat of his heart. The urge to puff up still flickered, but he was in control. He remembered Aunt Flo's words, and the sensation would gently subside. They navigated back through the strange deep-sea landscape, past the still silent galleon, and eventually, the water began to lighten. The familiar warmth returned, and the distinctive colors of their home reef shimmered into view. Ahead, they could see frantic little fish darting about, their usual evening glow already missed. As Coral zipped ahead to announce their return, a cheer erupted from the Coral Kingdom. Fish of all shapes and sizes rushed forward, their eyes wide with relief as they saw the magnificent bundle of glow-algae. Elder Finn, the wise old whale shark, let out a deep, rumbling sigh of contentment. Bubbles, for the first time, wasn't the center of attention because of an accidental commotion. He was a hero, not for causing trouble, but for overcoming it. He helped Sheldon carefully deposit the glow-algae back into its rightful place. And as the evening settled, the entire reef began to shimmer with its familiar, comforting light. That night, the Glow Fest was brighter than ever. Laughter echoed through the coral tunnels, and the glow-algae tasted sweeter than usual. Bubbles, surrounded by his friends, felt a warmth spread through him that had nothing to do with excitement or panic. It was the warmth of belonging, of responsibility, and of knowing he had grown. He still got excited, of course. Bubbles was Bubbles after all. But now, when a particularly juicy plankton floated by or a thrilling game of tag began, he'd take a moment. He'd feel the bubbling feeling inside, acknowledge it, and then, with a calm breath, he'd choose how to react. No more accidental giant lantern adventures. He had learned to manage his big emotions, understanding that thinking before you blow wasn't just about his size, but about making sure his actions, big or small, brought light and happiness, not bubble trouble, to his beloved reef. The coral kingdom, bathed in its clear, calm glow, was proof of Bubbles' big, important lesson.